Accessing Imperial archive record. Designation Astronomican fuel consumption. Observe the cold, unforgiving mathematics of survival. The average daily requirement to maintain the Emperor's guiding light and keep the galaxy from tearing itself apart is exactly 10,000 human souls. Deviation tolerance, absolute zero. If the quota falls short, entire star systems are swallowed by the warp. Therefore, to the bureaucratic mind of the Imperium, this daily industrialized slaughter is not a moral failing. The conclusion is already written in blood. Human sacrifice is entirely within acceptable parameters. We comfort ourselves by calling these tales a dark fantasy, but open your eyes to the void. This is not a myth. This is infrastructure. Direct your analytical gaze to a localized manifestation of this horror. We open case file E731. Location: the freezing, toxic shadows of a minor hive city. The primary subject is a nameless male, exactly 7 standard years of age. He exists in the suffocating lower levels, a microscopic statistical anomaly born into an ocean of industrial rot, breathing air thick with smog and despair. Within the confines of a rusted hab block, an unauthorized psychic manifestation is abruptly detected by the orbital augurs. The boy, weeping in the pitch-black dark, had placed his trembling hands upon his dying mother. Through a raw, desperate connection to the warp, he forced the respiratory plague out of her blood. The maternal subject, previously designated as terminally ill and rapidly expiring, is temporarily restored to health. The black veins recede, and her violent coughing abruptly stops. To the child, it is a beautiful miracle born of profound love. But miracles are strictly illegal in the Imperium of Man, and love holds no currency in the dark. To the silent, ever-watching cogitators of the Inquisition, it is a catastrophic breach of biological protocol. The data slates in the high spires immediately process the anomaly, stripping away his humanity with a single keystroke. His classification is updated: unsanctioned Psyker. Witness the terrifying mechanical precision of the Imperial machine. There is no trial, there is no investigation, and there is no hesitation. The response time is immediate. Heavily armored Adeptus Arbites descend upon the rusted hab block like angels of death. The physical obstruction at the domicile entrance, a heavy, locked iron door, is not knocked upon. It is violently removed from its hinges with explosive force, shattering the fragile illusion of safety. When the mother screams, instinctively throwing her frail body in front of her son to shield him from the armored giants, she is not viewed as a grieving human being protecting her child. She is simply logged as an obstacle in the path of Imperial collection. Resistance encountered, resistance eliminated. A single, brutal strike from a shock rifle crushes her skull against the concrete. Her status is clinically updated in the overarching ledger: deceased. The boy does not even have the time to process the murder of his entire world. He is violently subdued, heavy iron shackles clamped mercilessly around his tiny wrists as he is dragged screaming into the unforgiving night. The surrounding neighbors cower behind their thin walls, completely silent, understanding that to show sympathy is to invite the Inquisition's wrath. As the mother's blood washes down the rusted grates, the local magistrate does not look away from his glowing data slate. He simply presses a brass rune, logging the final entry of the incident. Asset secured. The extraction is complete. The asset is transferred from the planetary surface to the cold, unforgiving hold of a transport vessel designated as a black ship. This is a massive, utterly silent armada of Gothic dreadnoughts that endlessly prowl the Imperium, serving as the inescapable tax collectors of human flesh. To step aboard a black ship is to leave the realm of the living and enter a floating purgatory, a vessel designed strictly for the absolute suppression of the human spirit. Containment parameters are initiated the moment the heavy airlocks seal shut. The interior architecture is a flawless masterpiece of psychological warfare and physical suffocation. The thick iron bulkheads are meticulously lined with psycho-conductive materials and ancient glowing warding runes that plunge the assets into absolute sensory deprivation. For a mind naturally attuned to the currents of the universe, this forceful severing is agonizing, a violent mental withdrawal that simulates the sensation of drowning on dry land. The internal security of these vessels is managed by entities that defy natural biological laws. They are guarded by the Sisters of Silence, an elite order of warriors born with the pariah gene, possessing an aura of sickening, unnatural emptiness. When these wardens patrol the frosted, lightless corridors, the psychic cargo does not merely feel fear. They experience intense physical hemorrhage, ruptured blood vessels, and overwhelming nausea. The mere existence of the guards is a weaponized affront to the prisoners' souls. As the weeks in the warp bleed into months, the side effects of this total suppression are meticulously recorded by the ship's logisticians. The psychically nullified atmosphere initiates a rapid, irreversible identity decay. The crushing isolation forces the mind to cannibalize its own memories just to maintain basic consciousness. The asset known as E731 sits shivering in the frost, trying desperately to hold on to the warmth of his mother's face, only to find the image forcibly replaced by the overwhelming, omnipresent reality of cold iron. The mortality data of the transit is regularly reviewed by the commanding officers. The survival rate among the unrestrained cargo is highly inconsistent, often resulting in rampant psychological collapse. Unable to bear the suffocating silence and the systematic erasure of their past, many subjects simply lose their minds and shatter their own skulls against the rusted grates to end the pain. Others succumb to rampant starvation or localized airborne plagues, yet to the fleet commanders, these deaths are not mourned. The losses are mathematically acceptable. The nightmare voyage finally approaches its end as the Armada breaches the heavily fortified borders of the Sol system. The gentle boy who once wept for his dying mother has been successfully hollowed out, meticulously emptied of his past to ensure total compliance. He no longer cries and he no longer speaks. His humanity has been cleanly stripped away, leaving only raw, unrefined potential trapped within a broken shell. The manifest is stamped with the final transit log. Cargo integrity maintained. Arrival protocol confirmed. Holy terror when the heavily armored hulls of the black ships finally pierce the smog-choked, polluted atmosphere of the throne world. The scale of the horror shifts dramatically. It transforms from a localized personal tragedy into an absurd, incomprehensible industrial nightmare. The surviving cargo, starved, traumatized, and physically broken, is mechanically offloaded into the massive labyrinthine fortress of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica to await their final sorting. Within the endless, dimly lit halls of the Scholastica Psykana, millions of terrified individuals are subjected to a brutal, merciless procedure simply designated as evaluation. This is not a medical triage designed to heal the sick or comfort the weary. It is a series of excruciating physical and psychological stress tests. The subjects are violently strapped into heavy mechanical chairs, wired directly to archaic cogitators, and subjected to psychic pressure designed to measure their absolute willpower and the sheer raw output of their genetic mutation. The evaluation is conducted strictly by emotionless adepts and blind cybernetic scribes who oversee the operation from raised brass podiums. To these exhausted officials, the weeping children and trembling elders are no longer citizens of the Imperium. They are merely industrial components on a galactic assembly line, being evaluated and sorted strictly by their projected burn rate. There is no malice in the eyes of the assessors. There is only the heavy exhaustion of fulfilling an endless, impossible quota. The outcomes of these stress tests determine the exact nature of the subject's doom. A very small, remarkably resilient fraction of the prisoners are deemed sanctioned assets. They are drafted for military use, fitted with explosive collars as battle psykers, or subjected to the agonizing soul-binding ritual that physically burns their eyes from their skulls to serve as communication relays across the stars. They are allowed to live, but only as enslaved, heavily monitored tools of the state, destined to completely burn out their minds before middle age. But the overarching data reveals a far more sinister reality for the vast, overwhelming majority. Subjects whose powers are too weak to be weaponized, or whose minds are too fractured by grief to serve the state, such as Asset E731, are quietly finalized. In a civilized universe, they might be granted a merciful euthanasia. But the Imperium does not waste a single drop of blood. The system decrees that their psychic output, while unstable for war, is entirely sufficient for combustion. Majority classification. Fuel. It takes exactly 4 seconds to liquidate a human life. With a single emotionless keystroke, the names of the condemned are permanently deleted from the Imperial census and reclassified as grade tertiary biofuel. Every single day, endless chained columns of these weeping men, women, and children are marched through the grand, polluted streets of terror, walking inexorably toward the glowing hollow mountain. They are systematically stamped, categorized, and logged into heavy parchment ledgers, individual identity removed. The chained columns are marched inexorably toward their final destination. System designation, the Astronomican. Function, galactic navigation beacon. To the religious zealots of the Imperium, this continent-sized psychic amplifier, buried deep within the Himalayan peaks, is a divine miracle. They fall to their knees, weeping in religious ecstasy as they worship the blinding golden beam projecting into the warp, praising the holy grace of the God Emperor. But the archive log cuts through the glorious propaganda to reveal the horrific, mechanical truth beneath the gold. This is not a holy sanctuary. It is an industrialized slaughterhouse. The energy source required to maintain this life-saving light is exclusively human psykers. Every single day, thousands of these condemned souls are herded into the blinding golden chambers of the hollow mountain. The air inside the facility does not smell of divine grace. It is choked with the heavy scent of frankincense, ozone, and the undeniable lingering stench of scorched bone. Asset E731, stripped of his ragged clothes and draped in a simple white penitent robe, is guided to his designated integration station. He is too exhausted, too hollowed out to fight back. Integration protocol commences. The boy is violently strapped into a complex, archaic brass pod. Heavy, rusted iron cables and psychoconductive tubes are brutally pierced through his fragile flesh, jacking directly into his central nervous system. He's physically wired into the grand amplifier, his nervous system forcefully merged with the monstrous architecture of the mountain. He simply stares blankly at the towering, oppressive golden statues of Imperial saints above him as the machine is activated. The consumption method of the Astronomican is not designed for mercy. It is engineered for gradual extraction. Their life force, their precious memories, their hopes, and the very essence of their souls are violently siphoned from their bodies to feed the Emperor's psychic projection. But the true unforgiving horror is that they do not die instantly. The Imperium has perfected the agonizing art of burning a soul as slowly as mathematically possible to maximize its yield. Optimization priority, maximum duration. Asset E731 does not turn to ash in a glorious flash of light. He sits helplessly in his iron chair, forced to join a telepathic choir of absolute agony, projecting his unimaginable suffering into the dark void for weeks. His skin cracks and glows with intense inner heat as he slowly desiccates. In his final moments, the fading memory of his mother's face flickers in his dying mind one last time, only to be instantly consumed by the roaring golden flame. The system finalizes the log for the anomaly once known as Elias. Subject E731 integrated. Status: active fuel. Termination delayed. Pain sustained. He is eventually reduced to dry, white ash, swept away by unfeeling servitors to clear the brass pod. Making room for the next child in line, the engine of the Imperium turns, fueled by the screaming, burning souls of the innocent, justified as a cold, necessary mathematical equation. Expand the analytical gaze from the ash-choked chambers of terror to the vast, freezing silence of the Milky Way. At galactic scale, the tragedy of Asset E731 does not grow larger. It shrinks. It becomes a data point, a rounding error in an infinite ledger. The daily consumption continues without pause, without grief, and without a single moment of institutional hesitation. Consider the staggering blindness required to sustain this system. A decorated Imperial Navy captain stands on the bridge of his majestic cruiser, navigating the treacherous dark of the warp. He looks upon the golden light of the Astronomican and whispers a prayer of profound, genuine gratitude. He has no idea, and perhaps more damningly no desire to know, that the light guiding him home is sustained by the sustained, deliberate burning of a 7-year-old boy from the underhive who once healed his dying mother with trembling hands. This is the true horror the Imperium perfected, not cruelty. Cruelty requires acknowledgement. What the Imperium perfected was distance, the careful, architectural separation between those who benefit from the system and those who are consumed by it. So long as the furnace is located far enough below the golden spires, the smoke simply becomes weather. Now lower the Gothic architecture, strip away the cosmic space magic. What remains? We live in a civilization that has learned the same lesson. Human beings are still sorted from birth, tested, ranked, and assigned a projected value to the machine. Those who cannot maintain the required output are not executed. They are simply rendered invisible. They fall through gaps that the system designed, gaps that exist not by accident, but by necessity. The machine requires them to fall because a gap filled is a safety net funded, and a safety net funded is a gear that turns slower. The black ships do not exist in our sky, but the cold logic that built them, the belief that the suffering of the unseen is an acceptable operational cost, that logic has never once left us. We have simply learned to call it something cleaner. We call it efficiency. We call it market forces. We call it the way things are. In the Grimdark future, they burn the soul in a roaring golden fire and call it holy. In the present, we consume it slowly in the grinding silence of a system that never once asks if you are okay, only whether you are still productive. The archive log reaches its terminus. The question it leaves behind has no comfortable answer. Are we building civilization, or are we just maintaining a very clean, very quiet furnace of our own? They are here. If you are receiving this frequency, they are already in orbit. The black ships, the sisters of silence. I can feel the cold bleeding through the walls. They don't want your loyalty. They just want your spark. Listen to me. Before the enforcers shatter your door, before they log your existence as fuel, hide your signature in the archives, seal the pact. Subscribe to Hackrift and leave your mark in the shadows while you still have a name. Do it now, because in this universe, an unsanctioned mind is just waiting to burn. They're at the door.